Imagine spending 27 years in prison, not knowing if you will ever see the outside world again. And then walking out smiling, ready not for revenge, but for reconciliation. This is the story of Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, a boy born in a rural village who grew into a global symbol of justice, courage, and forgiveness. But Mandela wasn't a myth. He was a human being who made controversial choices, faced crushing failures, and questioned himself often. Today, we explore the real story, one that stretches from the grasslands of the Eastern Cape to the presidency of a divided nation.
Nelson Mandela was born on July 18, 1918, in Mbizo, a tiny village in South Africa. His birth name, Rolihlahla, means troublemaker in Xhosa, a fitting prophecy for a boy meant to challenge the world. Mandela belonged to the Thembu royal lineage, though his branch was not destined for the throne. His father, Gadla Henry Vakaniaswa, was a local chief, respected but later removed from his position after a dispute with colonial authorities, an early sign to young Mandela of how power could be used unfairly. After his father's death, Mandela was sent to live at the great place of Mkhekezweni, the royal palace of the Thembu people. There, he absorbed the values that would shape him: collective leadership, listening before speaking, the belief that a leader is a servant of the people. Mandela would later say that his earliest political education came not from books, but from watching tribal meetings under the shade of trees.
Mandela was the first in his family to attend formal school. A teacher gave him the English name Nelson, a colonial practice at the time. But the turning point came in his late teens. Sent to Helltown and later Fort Hare University, Mandela encountered ideas he had never seen before: African nationalism, self-determination, and resistance to oppression. He became part of campus politics and was even suspended from Fort Hare after participating in a student protest. To avoid an arranged marriage planned by the Thembu regent, Mandela fled to Johannesburg. There, working as a clerk in a law firm, he came face to face with the harsh realities of racial segregation, a system that would soon harden into the legal framework known as apartheid.
In Johannesburg, Mandela met activists who would shape his destiny. Walter Sisulu, the charismatic real estate agent and recruiter. Oliver Tambo, the brilliant lawyer who became Mandela's lifelong collaborator. Members of the African National Congress, ANC. Mandela joined the ANC in 1944, helping form the ANC Youth League, which demanded more direct action against racial discrimination. By 1948, the National Party came to power and formalized apartheid, a system that classified South Africans by race, controlling where they could live, work, travel, and even whom they could marry. Mandela quickly rose within the ANC, leading boycotts, strikes, and civil disobedience campaigns inspired by nonviolent movements around the world. But the government responded with brutal force. And the movement reached a breaking point.
The turning point came on March 21, 1960, the Sharpeville massacre. Police opened fire on peaceful protesters, killing 69 people. Mandela and his colleagues concluded that peaceful protest alone could not dismantle the apartheid regime. In 1961, Mandela co-founded Umkhonto we Sizwe, or MK, the armed wing of the ANC. Its strategy was sabotage, targeting infrastructure, not people. Mandela emphasized over and over, "We chose sabotage because it offered the best hope of avoiding the loss of life." The government labeled him a terrorist. Mandela went underground, disguised as a worker, journalist, or driver, earning the nickname Black Pimpernel. He secretly traveled across Africa to seek support for the struggle. But in 1962, he was captured and sentenced to 5 years for leaving the country illegally. Worse was to come. In 1963, police raided Lily's Leaf Farm, the covert headquarters of MK. Documents found that linked Mandela and other ANC leaders to sabotage operations. During the Rivonia trial, Mandela delivered one of the most famous speeches in history. "I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society. It is an ideal for which I am prepared to die. Instead of execution, Mandela received a life sentence. He was sent to Robben Island, the brutal prison off the coast of Cape Town. He was 45 years old. He would leave prison at age 71.
On Robben Island, Mandela lived in a tiny cell, 7 feet by 9 feet. Prisoners crushed rocks for hours in the blinding sun. They slept on thin mats and wore shorts, even in winter. But Mandela transformed prison into a university. He taught younger prisoners politics and history. He learned Afrikaans to negotiate with wardens. He wrote letters and secretly drafted parts of his autobiography. He practiced discipline, making his bed sharply every morning, exercising daily. The prison guards tried to break him. But over time, Mandela's dignity began to change them. One guard later said, "Mandela was the prisoner we could not help respecting." Through the 1970s and 80s, resistance against apartheid grew globally. Sanctions, protests, and diplomatic pressure mounted. The apartheid government realized it could not contain the crisis. They needed Mandela. They tried to negotiate, but Mandela refused to accept release without political freedom for all South Africans. On February 11, 1990, the world watched as Nelson Mandela walked out of Victor Verster prison after 27 years. The crowd was massive, the cheers overwhelming, but Mandela's message was calm. Our struggle has reached a decisive moment. Negotiations with President F.W. de Klerk began. It was an incredibly tense period. South Africa was on the verge of civil war. Violence between political factions threatened to collapse the transition. Yet Mandela insisted on dialogue over vengeance. In 1993, Mandela and de Klerk jointly received the Nobel Peace Prize for steering the country toward democracy. In April 1994, South Africans of all races voted in their first democratic election. Lines stretched for miles. Some people waited 10 hours to cast a ballot. Nelson Mandela became the first black president of South Africa. But he faced monumental challenges. A deeply divided society. A devastated economy. High expectations. Large-scale political violence. Mandela prioritized reconciliation. Instead of punishing white South Africans, he invited them into nation-building. He supported the Truth and Reconciliation Commission led by Archbishop Desmond Tutu, which exposed atrocities from all sides while allowing amnesty in exchange for full disclosure. Mandela also used powerful gestures. Wearing a Springbok rugby jersey to unite the nation during the 1995 Rugby World Cup. Visiting the widow of apartheid architect Hendrik Verwoerd. Including political rivals in his administration. Mandela's presidency lasted only one term. He believed leaders should know when to step down. After leaving office in 1999, Mandela focused on HIV/AIDS awareness, peace negotiations across Africa, education through the Nelson Mandela Foundation, strengthening democracy worldwide. He became one of the most respected figures on earth, admired by presidents, activists, and ordinary people. Yet he always insisted, "I am not a saint, unless you think of a saint as a sinner who keeps on trying." Mandela passed away on December 5, 2013, at age 95. Millions mourned him across the world.
Nelson Mandela's life teaches us that freedom is not inevitable. Equality is not automatic. Peace requires courage, strategy, and sometimes sacrifice. But most of all, Mandela reminds us that true leadership is not about standing above others. It is about lifting others up, even when they once stood against you. His journey, from rural shepherd to revolutionary to president, remains one of humanity's greatest stories of transformation. Mandela changed South Africa, but his example continues to change the world.